Hello, fellow lore keepers! Welcome back to another Alt-Tab Horror Cooking Companions video, where I completely and utterly fixate on a single line in the game and go into the lore and thematic and symbolic meanings. So let's skip the pleasantries, like and subscribe or whatever, and let's get right into it. The line I'm referencing is, of course, said by Cabbage during the endgame, when she and the other Chompets are in the kitchen. Raspberry has just accused you of committing crimes against humanity, detailing the boiling bodies of children in the cauldron found in the kitchen. To which Cabbage responds with the line, "You can see a cauldron in the famous artwork, The Garden of Earthly Delights." And this is the line I will be tearing apart for this video. If you've never heard of or seen The Garden of Earthly Delights, it is a fantastical, macabre painting by Hieronymus Bosch from the early period of the Northern Renaissance. It has mystified art historians since its conception, with many arguing the reasons and meanings behind this masterpiece of art. Though one thing is clear, The Garden of Earthly Delights is a painting about sin and the downfall of humanity, a warning against succumbing to temptation. Right off the bat, viewers of the painting are enveloped by the fantastical imagery depicted within, as the painting stands 7 feet tall by 13 feet wide. This intentional 3-part composition is what's known as a triptych. It allows the artist a way to tell the story where the viewer reads from left to right. Bosch utilizes perspective in lines to direct the viewer's eyes to begin on the left panel's foreground, where the most important imagery is. In this panel, we see the joining of Adam and Eve, where God presents Eve to Adam, which would have been iconic imagery during the time. Clearly, this painting has a massive amount of religious themes, as Catholicism was at its height during the time of the Northern Renaissance. But I mean, forget God, forget Adam. We're here to focus on Eve and what she represents. You know the story. The devil tempts Eve to eat the forbidden fruit of the Garden of Eden, which she does, dooming all of humanity to sin and hellfire. This sin of succumbing to temptation that leads her to eat the forbidden fruit is what causes the downfall of humanity, in an almost direct parallel to Cooking Companions, where Eve is representative of the main character. The forbidden fruit is human meat, and the devil is, of course, the Baba Yaga. This panel begins humanity's descent to hell through temptation and sin. Continuing on with the painting, we make our way to the middle and largest panel, which gives it the titular namesake, the Garden of Earthly Delights. This is where we find humanity giving in to the devil's temptation by eating and enjoying the forbidden fruit, quickly corrupting the once pure paradise of Eden. An interesting thing to note in this panel is, again in the foreground, down in the corner. Here we see Adam and Eve depicted as experiencing shame, trying to hide themselves, just as I and other theorists have said about our main character. They are ashamed of their sins, so they attempt to hide, to run away from the devil, the Baba Yaga. Art historians believe that directly behind Adam, we catch a small glimpse of Noah, like Noah's Ark Noah, ominously lurking in the back, reminding the viewer of the inevitable flood to wipe away all of humanity for giving in to their sins. This is a strong parallel to the floods the Baba Yaga is responsible for to trap her victims in the cabin as punishment for their sins. In this middle panel, we see hordes of people reveling in the sinful indulgence of forbidden fruit, which leads us to the horrors of the third panel. In this progression, we notice another parallel to Cooking Companions, wherein the more meat a person eats, the further into madness they fall, enjoying the delectable taste of their forbidden fruit. The third panel is where humanity faces the consequences of their sins and pays for their sinful indulgence. At the bottom right-hand corner, we find a pig dressed as a nun, forcing a man to sign a contract with the devil, which is a parallel to the main character's relationship with the Baba Yaga, where they receive long-lasting life and supernatural powers in exchange for their soul. Following the line upwards, we come to an insane image of a bird person, known as the Prince of Hell. He wears a cauldron as a crown, sits upon a throne of a toilet, and dines on a human body. Now this, lore keepers, is what our girl Cabbage was referring to when she said, "You can see a cauldron in the famous artwork, The Garden of Earthly Delights." And there is actually so much to dive in with just this tiny part of the painting that relates to Cooking Companions. Starting, of course, with the cauldron crown. We all know by now, given my previous theories, that the Baba Yaga is always seen with a cauldron, used as transportation or for cooking her victims. However, this cauldron is upside down and definitely not used for cooking humans. Instead, it rests upon the Prince of Hell's head as a makeshift crown, which symbolizes the power of authority the Baba Yaga has over the main character. She basically lords over them, using her powers to control them. And the Prince of Hell eating a human couldn't be more direct than the cannibalistic parallel with cooking companions. He is eating a human as punishment for his sin of indulging in the forbidden fruit, i.e. human meat. One thing to notice about the Prince of Hell, though, is the fact that he's part bird. Deardream Studios has not been shy about teasing us with the significance of birds and their lore and symbolism in the game, and this only enhances their importance. Now, right below our bird friend, we see a woman doomed to stare at her reflection for eternity for giving in to sin. I believe she parallels the main character, who is known to be so terrified of their reflection that they refuse to look into the mirror no matter how many times prompted in the game. So once in hell as punishment, they must face who they really are. Which then leads me to my last point, that the basement in Cooking Companions is actually hell. The basement is where the main character is tortured with the reality of their sins. It is where their sins are put on display in the cages around the room, and where the mirror in the center reflects back at them every single time they, like Eve, give in to temptation and eat the forbidden fruit, just like in Bosch's third panel in his painting, The Garden of Earthly Delights. Okay, so I'm almost certain Deardream didn't go through this painting to make these intentional parallels to these specific parts. Cabbage's line is simply an Easter egg. However, I'm having fun super-duper overanalyzing. Kind of like in high school when your English teacher had you analyzing the colors of curtains in every Charles Dickens book when you really just wanted to say that the curtains were blue because he freaking liked the color blue! Yup, that's me, taking a single line from Cooking Companions, hyper-focusing on it, and making an entire video on it. If you want to see more videos of me hyper-focusing on a single line from my game, let me know in the comments if that's something you're interested in. As well as like and subscribe for more indie horror theory videos. But anyway, thank you so much for watching until the end. I'll see you next time. Sweet dreams, lore keepers.
Welcome back to